Welcome to the 22 Dracut Town Candidates Forum. I'm Teddy Panos, morning show host at 980 WCAP, and I will be your moderator this evening. The Dracut Candidates Committee has organized this forum to give Dracut voters an opportunity to hear about the candidates' views and platforms on the issues that matter most to voters, so you can make an informed decision at the polls on May 7th. I and the committee members, Emily Maddox and Nancy McDonald, wish to extend our sincere thanks to all of the candidates for your participation and to all of the Dracut residents and voters who engaged in the conversation online and submitted their questions for the candidates. Tonight, we will hear from the candidates for town moderator first, followed by the school committee candidates, and then the Board of Selectmen candidates. The candidates for town moderator will each have 5 minutes to read their statement to the community. In the school committee and Board of Selectmen forums, candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and 2 minutes to share a closing statement at the end of their particular forums. I will ask the questions in a round-robin format, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. I'd be more than happy to repeat or clarify any of the questions, but ask that you please refrain from rebuttals and personal attacks. We have a busy night ahead of us, and in order to get through the questions in a timely manner, we do ask that the audience refrain from any applause and any loud comments for or against a particular candidate so as not to interrupt the flow of the program. Anyone that does act in such behavior will be required to leave immediately. Don't make us throw you out. And we ask that you conduct yourself with a sense of nonpartisanship during this forum. Now then, the first presentations we will hear tonight are the statements from the candidates for town moderator. There is one seat available, and it is a 3-year term. The candidates are David Martin and George Meliaris. Based on a random draw, we'll hear from Mr. Martin first.
Thank you. I'd like to first off thank the committee for allowing me the opportunity to come before this audience and to speak to the residents of the town. I think it's a great opportunity for everyone in the town to understand what all the candidates are about, what they have as a background, and the issues that are important to them. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Dracut. I've been here 58 years. My wife and I have raised 3 children that went through the Dracut school system, and they're now doing well. My business also resides in Dracut since 1994. I own and operate DM Remodeling Contracting Company. I also served 21 years with the Dracut Fire Department. I retired in 2007 at the rank of captain. I have been elected to this position in the past. I was your town moderator for the years 2003, 4, 5, and 6. So I feel I do have the experience to do this job. I've done it in the past. I'm running for this position because last November, at the November town meeting, the current moderator was not present. At that time, I was told that he had resigned and the town clerk was going to be doing the meeting. Whether he did or did not, I do not know. It was not an important factor at that point in time. But I chose to get back into this position if it was possible. I felt at this point my business is established, my children are grown, and I have time to give back to the community. And I like to do that. Some may have noticed I don't have a whole bunch of signs out. I'm not a big fan of the signs. I don't think signs vote. I put signs out merely to show that I am interested. The signs, I feel, clutter the community. In years past, they were made of cardboard, and when it got wet, like we had heavy rains, they would come apart and just be all over the neighborhood. So I chose not to put many of those out. I just wanted to put enough around that people knew that I was serious about this race. Currently, the town bylaws state that you should have one person on the finance committee from each precinct. We now have 10 precincts, not 7 as we did for many years. There's 7 to 9 member board that is appointed by the moderator. Currently that bylaw is not being followed. I'm not sure what the reason is, but there are more than one person from a precinct on that. I'd like to see if we have an opportunity to change that. The moderator also appoints the Permanent Building Committee and the Rules and Regulations Committee. If elected, I'd like to see all the seats filled on those committees so that the town has great representation for each of those particular committees. One thing I'd like to see changed is to try to implement a voting mechanism at town meeting that is electronic. Rather than having a screaming contest, which I think is somewhat archaic, to vote an item up or down. I think that with the times now, we should be able to find some electronic system out there to do this for us, so that each person at the town meeting would have an ability to vote quietly at his or her chair electronically. Lastly, I consider Mr. Miliaris a friend of mine. Our children grew up together, they played basketball together, we've been to cookouts together. This is not a race against one person against another. It's simply two people, I feel, applying for one particular position, which I think both will serve the community well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Next, we will hear from Mr. Miliaris.
Yes, Dracut voters, I can assure you I did not resign. I did offer to resign because I had a personal commitment out of state, and the meeting only had 11 warrants on it. It was Kathy Graham, the clerk's last meeting. She conducted the meeting ably, and it was a good thing. She refused to accept my resignation. The Finance Committee currently has 7 members, and there's some confusion. There's conflict between the charter and the bylaws. The charter says 7 to 9 people should be appointed, 1 from each precinct. It also says the Finance Committee is to be governed by the town bylaws. The town bylaws call for 7 members of the Finance Committee, 1 from each precinct. We currently have 6 different precincts represented out of 7 people. Those 7 people include some terrific professionals, and I'm very proud of every appointment I've made. In fact, I'm going to suggest to the voters that the town management is not happy that I've appointed a finance committee that's able and willing to serve and questions the way the town spends money. That's why I have an opponent in this race. And he is a friend of mine, and he is a good and decent man. When I start the town meetings, I always remind people to act civilly, no personal attacks. For instance, when Winston Churchill was in Parliament, he spoke, and another member of Parliament, a female member, stood up and said, "Mr. Churchill, if I were your wife, I'd put arsenic in your tea." To which Winston Churchill replied, "Madam, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." Now that's a personal attack, so we don't do that at town meeting, and people have been very good about that. One of the other things that I noticed in my time going to town meetings was that if there were votes concerning the fire department or the police, usually they're significant matters. For instance, in 2016, there was an attempt by town manager Duggan to take the appointment of the police chief out of civil service. And the current police chief spoke against it. A couple of the selectmen spoke. It was a very heated atmosphere. And I told Jim Duggan, the manager, before the meeting, that it was my plan to have that meeting done by ballot. And, you know, Dave's right. There was a lot of confusion at the ballot box, but I remember, you know, people were there, too many people. So after that, I had one precinct at a time go out to the ballot. And I had the tellers monitoring who was near the ballots, because sometimes there would be union officials from either the fire or the police near the ballot box. And people get intimidated, and that's why I wanted to do it by ballot. I think that anybody who's been to the meetings knows that I let people speak. I err on the side of letting people speak. You get 5 minutes to speak in Dracut. 3 minutes is a long time, 5 minutes is obviously longer, and a selectman, Jim Doherty from Andover, who was 90 years old when he conducted a meeting, once said, after 3 minutes, you're losing people. At 5 minutes, you've probably lost them. If you go 7 minutes, they had no limit. they'll vote for the other issue. They'll go on the other side of the issue. So we have a generous amount of time within which to do that. The challenging thing about the town meeting, I've been practicing law in the courts of the Commonwealth for the last 44 years. And the town meeting is sort of like a courtroom. There's a lot going on. People come in with amendments to motions, and you have to make a decision as the moderator. Is that amendment fair to the people who aren't present at the town meeting? The warrant warns the people what's going to be discussed. Somebody makes a motion to amend. For instance, if we were going to make a school handicapped accessible, an old school, like let's make the Collinsville School where the school is, handicapped accessible, if somebody made a motion at the meeting to put a new roof on, that motion would be out of order. If somebody made a motion to put an elevator in there, that would be fine because that makes it handicapped accessible. So sometimes that call's a difficult one to make. Very confident with the calls I've made, and I've always told people, if it's at all close on the voice, I call for people to stand up. And I tell people, if 7 of you do that, you can contest it. Thank you very much. Please vote for me.
Thank you, Mr. Meliaris. So this concludes our town moderator statements portion of the forum. We will take a very short break. Don't go away. When we come back, we'll return with our school committee forum.
Good job.
And welcome back to the 2022 Dracut Candidates Forum. The next presentations we will hear are the opening statements from the candidates for school committee. There are 2 seats available for a 3-year term. The candidates in alphabetical order are Alyssa Nazaro, Sarah Powling, Rob Shepard, Linda Truville, and Allison Volpe. Based on a random draw, we will hear introductions from our candidates, starting with Ms. Nazaro first.
To everyone who put together this amazing committee and, amazing, well, it's not a debate, but forum. This is wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So my name's Alyssa Jacobs Nazaro. I am one of the candidates running for the school committee. I grew up in Lowell, but I've lived in Dracut since 2009. My mother owned a business in Dracut for about 45 years. My sister owns it now. So I've been a part of this community for a really long time. I have 2 kids, an 8-year-old who attends at the Inglesby and a 4-year-old who is in the preschool program at the Brookside. Both are on IEPs. I'm running because I am I'm passionate about our kids and our schools and our community. And it's really important to me that we are growing in the right direction. And I want to help to fight to get us there. So I think that it is important that our schools are a critical part of our community. And we are at an opportune time now where we're growing, we're developing, we're prospering, and our schools' growth is going to help to contribute to a great community. I think that our kids and our schools are a very important part of our town, and I'm willing to fight to get them to where they need to be and to give them everything that they need. Thank you. I respectfully ask for your vote on May 7th for one of the two positions available, and your early voting.
Thank you, Ms. Nazaro. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Powell.
Hi, thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you for all of the citizens who are interested in local politics. My name is Sarah Powling. I'm running for a seat on the Dracut School Committee. I'm a lifelong Dracut resident. I currently live here with my husband Joe and my sons Joey and Jimmy. Joe is a firefighter, paramedic, and a police officer, so we are very supportive of our first responder families. My son Joey is in the 3rd grade, and my son Jimmy is in the 2nd grade at the Greenmont Ave Elementary School. I volunteer there as the PTO vice president. I am also a parent representative on the school council there as well. You might remember me as Sarah Tassoni. I grew up on Bouchard Ave. I later moved to Sue-Ann Drive, where my parents still live. After we got married, we bought a condo at the Cascade Condos on 110, and we currently live on Leo Ave, where we're raising our kids. I graduated from DHS in 2003. I then went on to UMass Lowell to get my bachelor's in psychology, and I went to Boston University to get my master's in social work. After that, I worked as an outpatient clinician in downtown Lowell, specializing in therapy with children. In doing that, I worked with them on a number of issues: depression, anxiety, social skills, trauma, all of that. So I am a huge proponent for mental health services, especially social skills and behavioral issues in our school. I'm also looking to foster communication, transparency, and give the parents of our town a voice on that board. I just want a return to normalcy for our children, and I will continue to work hard to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, thank you. Mr. Shepherd?
Hi. First off, I want to thank the Candidates Committee for putting this together tonight. I want to thank the Dracut voters that have come out here, and especially thank you to everyone that submitted questions. Without this event, Dracut would probably have a hard time kind of knowing what each of us are about, and it's nice to have this type of an event. I grew up in Dracut. I went to Dracut High School, and I actually started off at Parker Avenue School. I graduated as a lost Dracut student, but then found my way and now have 3 post-secondary degrees in science, and I'm now a licensed Massachusetts professional engineer. By nature, engineers want to help. Engineers want to teach others and pull them up as well. That's what I'm about. I have a strong passion for education, but I have a soft spot for those that have a tough time understanding textbook learning. Hands-on learning is what helped me. I was in a drafting class, and that's what sparked my interest late in my education, and it brought me to where I am sitting right here today. So I do credit the Dracut schools for that because of a drafting class that was available, something that is actually not available today. I also have a soft spot for troubled youth. There were kids that I knew that would sit in in-house and they just wanted to do something with their hands. They needed to be reached. And a community service alternative for those youth, I believe that's what's needed right now instead of in-house suspension. I humbly ask for your vote on May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Truville.
How are you? Thank you very much. The invitation was greatly appreciated. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not a politician. I am a pure educator. Having gone through the Dracut school system, graduated from the high school in 1966, and then proceeded on to teach my first 20 years in the system at the old, well, it's becoming the Veterans Building at the moment, and then Collinsville School. Ended my career at the Collinsville School in my third grade classroom. I then became vice principal at the Campbell School, where I learned so much more. And every level that I moved to, I learned something that I could carry into the next experience. So after I did that, then I became principal at the middle school for 10 years. And that was a wonderful, wonderful job. I got to know the culture of the families. I got to become very interrelated with them as far as their students were concerned. Anybody who knows me knows that I recognize all these students and they become part of my family. At one point I had 1,050 kids at the middle school, so I knew they belonged to a certain family, and I knew 2 or 3 of the names, and I would say, oh, I know that's a last name person. I said, let me get the first one. And so when I left there, then I went up to central office. And the experiences that I had there, working with the homeless, working with special ed, working with all of the departments, gave me an understanding that I hope I can take into this job. So I would appreciate you listening carefully to us, and if you think that I can answer the questions and do the job that you think needs to be done, please vote for me.
Thank you, Dr. Truvel. And finally, we'll hear from Ms. Volpe.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, I'm Allison Volpe, and I'm running for re-election to the Dracut School Committee. First, I also want to thank the Candidates Committee and our moderator, viewers at home, DATV, attendees, and I'd like to thank my fellow candidates here for giving the opportunity for all of us to share our thoughts. Some of you may remember in 2015, I started my journey when former Greenmont principal and school committee member Dr. Michael McNamara asked me to run for his seat because he was planning to retire. I had 2 children at the Brookside at the time, and I also had a daughter on an IEP. As a compliance professional with a background in policy and audits, I had a very unique and valuable skill set to bring to the committee. Back in 2015, 2016, when I was elected, school funding was a primary concern. I focused on building positive relationships and trust with our municipal partners, and I also focused on understanding the complexities of school finance. I was also appointed by the town manager to the Master Planning Committee. I was to serve as the representation for the school department. This was a 3-year appointment, which resulted in the document that should be used by our selectmen to guide the town planning for the next decade. During my tenure on the board, we've accomplished a remarkable amount of work. Technology upgrades, safety upgrades, social emotional learning curriculum, school adjustment counselors, school resource officers, Sandy Hook Promise, Girls on the Run, Inglesby and Brookside roof projects, stadium and turf projects, the Campbell School renovation project, math curriculum, STEM initiatives, unified sports, and Best Buddies. I also want to note that because of the committee's years of advocating for increased financing and funding, the school department will see the largest increase in school funding that we've seen in decades. Dracut will have an additional $3.3 million this year, and we're going to add 27 new positions. So I am proud to be a member of the school committee, and I am looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Volpe. Now we move on to the moderated portion of the forum, and the first question. Our superintendent estimates that we lose about 8 to 10% of Dracut teachers each year to other districts. And according to Mass Department of Education statistics, Dracut's overall teacher retention rate is at about 86% for the last year. Teacher turnover can be expensive, representing the loss of the training put into the departing teacher and requiring that we engage in additional costs for hiring and training new staff. What specifically do you think can be done to support teachers and administrators so they can be successful in their jobs and return year after year, becoming experienced, highly valued teachers for the kids? We'll begin with you, Ms. Powling.
Thank you for the question. Actually, this is a great question. If you just watched the past school committee meeting on Monday, I actually spoke out about this very thing. I suggested that there was a lot of teacher burnout going on, as to be expected after these past 2 years. And I actually suggested that we use some of the COVID relief money that we still have. And I said that we should give teachers bonuses. I understand we can't use that money to increase their pay completely, like permanently, because that money runs out. But I think some kind of stipend or bonus to all teachers and staff that have gone through these last couple of years with us would show a huge amount of appreciation to them. And hopefully that would help them and keep them to stay in our schools, because our kids need them. Our kids love them. So many teachers worked so hard, and they deserve the appreciation, just like I believe it was McDonald's employees or grocery employees during the pandemic. Everyone got bonuses. A lot of companies got bonuses. Even if it was just an extra $1 an hour, they got something. And our teachers, we need to keep our teachers. We need to keep our teachers here. We need them to be happy. And then along the lines of what can we continue to do for them, I think we need much better communication all around. I think teachers deserve a voice. I think teachers should be able to speak up without fear. And I think there should be better ways of communication between the teachers, the school committee, the superintendent, the parents, the children, everybody. So I would propose for stronger communication. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Shepherd.
I definitely want to echo exactly what Sarah Powling said here. You know, I have spoken with a lot of teachers, current staff, but more importantly, I spoke with some that have actually left. They were taking jobs for almost $10,000 more than what we're offering in Dracut. This may sound like, oh, you know, it's a teacher moving on to a better position. These were kids that I went to school with. These were students that had Dracut pride. It hurt them to leave. Now, hearing that, it hurts me to even say it right now in this room. Definitely pay is number one. That would usually entice someone to stay for retention, but appreciation. Right now, they don't feel appreciated, at least some that I have spoken to, and that's painful to say. If there's, you know, COVID was difficult for a lot of teachers, but you know, and there was a lot of turnover even just in every other industry within this world, but sitting down and having discussions, letting them vent, let them talk to you. There's too much of a wall building that's happening right now within staff and within teachers, and that shouldn't be it. And I'd like to see our candidates, but also the committee, sit down with teachers, go do walkthroughs through the schools, see how things are happening in there, see how they feel, see the interaction with the kids, because we have great teachers. And to hear that they want to leave because they're just not appreciated is just wrong. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Dr. Truville.
A teacher's basic intrinsic character is to want to be valued for the job they do, to want to be valued for the insight they have on how young minds work. And so for us to maintain the status of these teachers, we need to find out why they're staying. Let's do the positive first. Why are you staying? Tell us what's working for you that may not work for somebody else, and maybe we can try that and see how we can maintain those that have an urge to leave thinking the grass might be greener. We have had teachers who didn't leave for more money, even though the COVID of the last 2 years was really a stress level for them, second to nothing. I think that what we need to do is show them what we can do to help them maintain their objective, which is success in the classroom. And whatever they need, we need to find out what it is that they need so that we can work toward getting that particular item or assistance so that they can work on students in their classroom who might have a diverse learning adventure, I call it, and have them be able to see what works here and why are you valued and why am I feeling not valued. Let's take all of these characteristics, let's sit down with everybody and let's try and understand what it is that keeps some teachers here and does not keep others here. So obviously it's a value issue in my eyes. Maybe funds might attribute to that as well, but I believe that if we sit with them, we find out what their problem is, and then we assist them with that problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Volpe?
Thank you. So obviously, our teachers need more money. The committee has been advocating for increased funding for years, and we've recently been able to add a step to our senior teachers because we value them and we want to keep them. Incidentally, ESSER funds cannot be used for bonuses. We have asked, and we are not allowed to use those funds because they are dedicated strictly to COVID relief. Aside from money, we need to give them supports. We need to help them manage class sizes. One of the ways we're doing that with the new 27 positions is we're going to add 2 elementary school teachers next year. We also need to add more opportunities for our teachers to have common planning time. So we have added at the elementary level an instructional coach, an art teacher, physical education teacher, a music teacher, and an ensemble teacher. This will give our teachers a chance in the elementary level to common plan and work on lessons plans. We're adding 2 vice principals at our elementary level, and that is also going to assist with some of the behaviors and some of the other issues that our teachers are dealing with. At the middle school and the high school, we're adding more staff and more academic supports and more teachers. So we're working on it, and we've heard you teachers, and we know what you want and need, and we listen to you. And by adding these extra positions and respecting your professionalism, we are working with you so you can, again, collaborate with your fellow teachers. And then having more vice principals is going to give our principals more opportunities to get in the classrooms and actually mentor you, because that is their primary goal. And I think I covered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Ms. Nazaro?
So I think our teachers do a phenomenal job in our schools. I think that they are not given all of the resources that they deserve. I think that they're overworked. I think that they have classroom sizes that can be borderline untenable with very limited resources. All this, I think, contributes to teacher retention. And it's a problem. It's a problem we've had for a long time. If you can go and you can go work at the Voc and you can make $15,000 more doing the same exact job you're going to do in Dracut, why are you going to choose to stay in Dracut? I think that our teachers want to be here. I think that they're phenomenal. I think that they do an excellent job. I feel that we need to fund them. We need to provide them with salaries that are appropriate for what they do and in line with other surrounding communities. And a way to get there, you know, we need to work on our budget. We need to work on increasing our funding. We need to work on increasing our resources so that we can provide them with the things that they need to be successful in educating our children and being instructional leaders in our schools. And I think that we are well on our way. This $3.3 million funding that we're actually getting that's coming in from the Chapter 70 increase is going to go a long way to relieve some of the stress on our teachers. We are adding resources that are going to help to take away some things that they're falling on their shoulders that necessarily shouldn't fall there. It's going to provide them with more time to be able to work on lesson plans and work on instruction for our children and helping them to be the best that they can be and being, you know, the pride of Dracut. Thank you very much.
All righty. Next question. There's been a lot of discussion relating to parental choice in public education. If elected, how will you address these questions and concerns while ensuring every child's right to a free and fair public education, given that families in this district comprise a vast array of family types, religions, cultures, and values? We'll begin with you, Mr. Shepherd, this round.
Parental choice. That has been the word since 2020. But you know what, it goes a lot deeper than that. There's parents that want to understand the curriculum. There's parents that want to be able to speak at community input, but also get a conversation back. Now, parental choice expands further than just those 2 words. They want to be heard. They want someone to listen to them and to talk with them back. Now, the coffee forums have been amazing. That was something that actually broke ground. You know, broke boundaries. There were candidates there that hadn't spoken together before. There were committee members with candidates that hadn't spoken. There were parents that showed up. That was amazing. That's what needs to keep happening. Now, as far as an interesting thing with parental choice as well, the busing. One of the special education parents had said, hey, you know, I have to bring my child all the way to Campbell School from right across from the high school here. Would you advocate for special education busing to send us there? Well, yeah, why not? You know, what's wrong with having a child on a bus? Right now, the static that I hear is busing, you know, more kids, oh, that causes more problems. No, that alleviates problems for parents. That helps parents. That's what this is about, us being up here today, is helping parents and helping students and making their life easier as they're in school. And that I say thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Truval.
Parental choice, in my viewpoint, is being able to decide what you want for your child. What is it that will make your child the most successful? A parent needs to find a place for that. A place that will address the social needs, the academic needs, the emotional needs. Every need that a child has, you need to find that place and choose that place for your child. Now, there are many choices that can be made in one single town. There are many choices that can be made in a variety of towns. I think a parent's choice needs to have a lot of comparisons. They need to do a lot of research. They need to be able to find that spot where their child will be the most successful. So a leader of a building needs to be able to expound on all of the good things that are in their building or in their town in order for them to be able to come up with a plan that they can offer to a group of people, a group of parents, a group of even educators within the parents' role, to be able to come and choose a particular place for their child. In Dracut, we have a variety of offerings that we can give students. We have the ability to offer cultural differences. We have a variety of programs that can foster after-school activities. And parents are looking for a variety of things. Some of them are actually looking just for outside activities. Some of them are looking for a special needs program that's going to meet their child's needs. Others are looking for an AP course that they will have for their children to be able to move forward academically. So I think a parent's choice needs to be the work of the parent to find and research the best place for them.
Thank you. Ms. Volpe?
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Truval. Parent choice has been a big topic for a year or so, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I just wanted to frame how I think that it's being used in two regards. The first with regard to mandates. So keeping in mind a public school, we have to follow Mass General Law. And according to Mass General Law, Chapter 69, the school board is a legal agent of the state and must therefore fulfill both state and federal mandates. So that means when it comes to a mandate, a state law, we don't have a choice. We have to implement the state law. The second piece I'm hearing about for choice is with curriculum. Keeping in mind the goal of public education is to provide a taxpayer-funded education opportunity for all students for the advancement of the community. So DESE defines its curriculum as a framework for providing teachers, students, families with a clear and shared expectations for what all students should know and be able to do by the end of the year. They represent a promise of equitable education for all students, and they formalize the expectation that all students in the Commonwealth will have access to the same academic content, regardless of zip code, background, or abilities. So parents have a choice to go to a private school, a public school, or a charter school, whatever you have, but a public school is limited because of the law. And also, one of the most equitable places you could go to right now is a public school. So I'd like folks to keep that in mind, that we have to follow mandates, we have to follow standards, and that we do it for the best interests of all of our students in the community and all of our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nazaro?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. There's been a lot
Sorry,
of
I
discussion.
feel like, you know, there's 5 of us. By the time you get to like the end, I was, you know,
I have it
you
in
forget what
front
the
of me.
original question is.
I don't even remember it, and I'm looking at it. There's been a lot of discussion relating to parental choice in public education. If elected, how will you address those questions and concerns while ensuring every child's right to a free and fair public education, given that families in this district comprise a vast array of family types, religions, cultures, and values?
So I think parental choice is really important. I think that every parent should have input on their children and how they learn and where they learn and what they learn. But that's their choice. And in the public schools, you are learning what the state and overall the country dictates is for your child. It is a public school. It is funded by the public, which is funded by the whole entire community. So parents do have a choice, but you choose to send your kids to public schools. Within the public schools, they're going to have a curriculum that's set by the state. They're going to have things that are mandated and things that they need to follow. And that's your choice. You can choose, as Allison said, to send your children to private schools. You can choose to send your children to charter schools. But you can't choose what your children learn in the public schools, and that's a difficult thing. And I do think that parents should have input. I think that, you know, being able to stand up at the community input in the school committee meetings and voicing your opinion, it matters. They hear you, they listen, and, you know, it is something that if fundamentally we don't think it's right, you should be fighting for. But it is a state mandate, and you do have to follow the state mandate if you choose to send your child to a public school. It's important to understand. I have 30 seconds left. I got to get used to that. It's important to understand that, you know, you're making the choice to send your children to a public school. It is, you know, it's difficult with parental choice. You should know what your kids are learning. You should understand their curriculum. You should understand what they're being taught in the classroom. But it's the teacher's job and it's DESE's job to tell you, to dictate what it is they should be learning. They're the experts.
Great. Thank you. And lastly, Ms. Powell.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I think that given the events of the last 2 years, there has been a loss of people realizing that they do still have their own rights. Unfortunately, after being told for 2 years that you can't open your business, or you have to wear a mask, or you have to get a shot, everyone seems to have become conditioned to, okay, must do that. And sadly, that has trickled not only, you know, at a worldwide and national level, that has trickled all the way down to our community of Dracut. And I mean, to every community, but here, where I grew up. And this is why I'm running, because we do have a choice. I mean, if everyone is jumping off a bridge and they say, oh, jump off a bridge, everyone's doing it, weren't we told when we grew up? Weren't we told not to copy what everyone else is doing? Weren't we told to make our own decisions and make our own choices? And I think that, you know, that's a very broad example, but it has trickled all the way down to our community, to the point where everyone is feeling like they have to just accept these rules, whether they make sense or not. Sure, they're mandates, but there's ways to change that. And instead of sitting back and passively just accepting every single thing that continues to get thrown at us, we need to stand up. We need to stand up for our own rights, for our children's rights, and everyone deserves that kind of choice. I mean, I'm talking about drastic things, but all the way down to curriculum transparency, we at least deserve to have some kind of understanding of what is going on in our kids' lives, and parents are the experts, so parents should be the ones that are in control. Thanks.
Great. Next question. Parents of children in the Dracut school system repeatedly report struggles in getting appropriate support services through an IEP or 504. The role of public schools in supporting students' special education needs is becoming increasingly complex every year. Nearly 85% of Dracut students with IEPs are in partial or full inclusion. What ideas do you have for better preparing and supporting our general education teachers in upholding the program modifications and accommodations in their students' IEPs 504s? Please be as specific as possible. The first respondent to this question is Dr. Truvel.
I think that those regular ed teachers who have special ed students in their classroom need to have professional development in order to provide for them the means of understanding how a special ed child learns. Ideally, it would be a teacher who is certified in both, and many times that does happen. You have a regular ed teacher who is certified in SPED as well. And so they have the tricks of the trade in how to get a student to understand something, or how to present an idea to a student so that they better understand it. Special ed teachers who are only certified in special ed are a wonderful breed, because having to evaluate many of them in my building, I would go in and watch them. And the patience that they had and the creativity that they had on how to present something to a child was astounding to me. And the ability that they had to divert a special ed's attention if it was going in the wrong direction, their ability. So I think that those type of skills that a purely special ed teacher has, I think we need to provide that professional development for the regular ed teachers who will always have special ed students in their classroom. So they need to understand their emotional being. They need to understand the frustration that those children are feeling when they can't learn like everyone else. So they have to be able to take those students and move them forward. And if they can't, then they need to figure out, who can I go to in the building until I do get my professional development? And there are many special ed teachers, and I see a couple of them right here, that I would send anybody to. So I believe that we need to provide professional development, and I think regular ed teachers need to be certified in special ed as well, or be provided with the means to use those skills in the classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Truvel. Ms. Volpe.
Thank you. So I'm going to agree with Dr. Truvel a lot, but I also want to add a little bit about this. I think that we really need to respect the professionalism and the experience of all our teachers. Every year, all our teachers have mandated training on 504s, IEPs, DCAPs, civil rights, diverse student needs, bullying prevention, mandated reporting. Every year you get this training. And also every year, the superintendent looks at opportunities to provide professional development that is going to help the teachers. Regarding specific inclusion and partial inclusion, really the first step you have to look at is the IEP, and you have to look at the service delivery grid on the IEP. For example, if that child needs a paraprofessional, obviously we need to have a paraprofessional in the classroom to provide that support. If there is no paraprofessional in the classroom, like Dr. Truvel was saying, there is a community in our schools and there's communication. So our teachers can talk to our special ed teachers, they can talk to our adjustment counselors, they can talk to each other. A lot of IEPs will have consults, so that can help the teachers with some of our students with our special needs. And also, one of the things we're going to be implementing is a behaviorist at the elementary school level, which is going to be huge for our teachers, because that's going to be someone who can specifically address some of these behaviors that we're having that have been exacerbated by COVID. The goal for any district is full inclusion, meaning having your special ed students in the classroom with a special ed support right there. It's very expensive, but it is the ultimate goal. And lastly, I just want to say our students have become the best inclusion experts with our best buddies and our unified sports. Our students are learning how to be inclusive and how to support their peers, and that is a beautiful thing, and that is probably the best thing that we're seeing so far.
Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Nazaro, to you.
Thank you. So I fully agree with Dr. Truvel and Ms. Volpe. You know, I will point out, our teachers do a fantastic job in our classrooms. I have 2 children on IEPs. My son's gone through many classrooms with teachers who have, you know, special ed training provided by the schools and not necessarily special ed teachers, but they do their job. They're looking at your children's IEPs, they're looking at the grids, they know the services that they need to attribute. But if they're in a classroom with 27 kids, and you have 10 of those kids that have IEPs, and you're in a lower elementary grade and you have no support, there's only so much you can do. So honestly, it really comes down to resources with our special ed. If we're not providing the resources and tools for these teachers to be able to do their job and do their job effectively, they have to take care of their whole entire classroom, as well as these special ed children that are in their classroom. And that's a huge job. And our teachers work extremely hard. They are very dedicated, very caring, and they are truly there to have our children succeed in any way possible. And if we're not providing them with the tools that they need to do this, it becomes very difficult. You could have the most specialized teacher. You could have a teacher in this classroom that has had all of the training, that is, fully certified in every special needs department. But if you're not providing them with the resources they need to do their job, it's just not going to be as effective. So for our special ed department, I think it is important that we are looking for funding and looking for resources that we can provide to give them the opportunities to do the best that they can with our children.
Thank you, Ms. Nazaro. Ms. Powell.
Thank you. I'm actually really excited about this question because I feel like I can tie it into a couple of the others as well. I recently attended the latest CPAC meeting that they invited the candidates to. And at that meeting, I proposed something that I have been working on in coordination with other teachers that I know. And there's one thing that I'm not sure many parents are aware of, but I believe if we can communicate this better and make it known, we can help teachers, we can help students, both on and not on IEPs, and we can help, parents, teachers, students, everybody. So basically, my plan is, there is something called the DCAPS. It stands for the District Curriculum Accommodation Plan, and it basically is dozens and dozens of accommodations that your student is entitled to, whether they're on an IEP or not. Every general education student is entitled to these accommodations. These accommodations range from, being allowed extra breaks, to being allowed to work with partners or in small groups, to being allowed to go to the calming center if you need to. And I proposed that at the beginning of every school year, the parents sit down and fill out a form and pick out their top accommodations that they think would work best for their specific child. And then the teachers would be able to get this form and work in collaboration with the parents. The teachers wouldn't have to guess what would work best for this kid that they just met. They'd have input from parents right from the beginning of the year. And they would be able to implement these accommodations and then track data regarding them, and they can figure out what works and what doesn't. And I'm running out of time, but I made a post about it on my Facebook group, so feel free to read more. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Finally, Mr. Shepherd.
All right. Well, what can general teachers, how can they be assisted in dealing with 504s, IEPs, and the constant changing of things? Well, in the private industry, we do a lot of outsourcing for our education process. When you're trying to build somebody up, a new hire, when you're trying to help, even a seasoned veteran, they need constant training. Now, what we do is we go to outside resources. We go to experts. There's a Federation of Children and Special Needs group that actually helps that local CPAC group. What can they provide to us? What can they do to help our current teachers? And would it be great to have them sit down in a lecture and actually, get a hands-on approach to things? Yeah, I think that'd be great. But more importantly, communication. We have, 6 buildings, and they all have their own individual special education program going on. Who is in charge of that? Who is leading that? Who is in charge of, educating our current general teachers and assisting them in hearing what they need? If anything, we need a leader. And that's what we should be hiring, is a leader for that special education group.
All right, thank you. And now we move on to the final question of this forum. This year, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a youth mental health advisory, warning of alarming increases in the prevalence of certain mental health challenges among children and teens, including anxiety and depression. The experiences kids have at school and with their classmates have a major impact on their mental health. What specifically can and should the schools in Dracut do to support our students' mental health, and how would you prefer to fund these initiatives? We start with you, Ms. Volpe.
Okay, thank you. Well, I can tell you what we have done. Since I joined the board, we went from 1 to 9 adjustment counselors in our schools. We have added a social emotional learning curriculum called the Ruler Program. This is Yale University's program. This focuses on teaching kids to understand emotions, relationships, creating a positive school climate. We also implemented, as part of our standard-based report cards in the elementary school, the for K-5 Habits of Mind. This is a program that teaches students how to persevere, have flexible thinking, and understanding other people's perspectives. At the Richardson Middle School, we implemented what's called an advisory. So every student has an advisory every day, which gives them an opportunity to meet with at least one trusted adult and form that connection. And also, we've implemented programs. Sandy Hook has some amazing programs. We did Start with Hello. We also did See Something, Say Something. And we also have an anonymous reporting app for students that are feeling like they are having issues with suicide, or if they feel like there's a friend in crisis. And this app is actually being used quite frequently, unfortunately. Positions we're adding for next year, I mentioned the behaviorists at the elementary school. We're adding another assistant director of student services to help our student services director. And we're also adding an academic support para and teacher at the high school. So if our kids are suspended, they're not just sent home to play on their devices, they're actually in school and getting some support. Could we use more resources? Obviously, of course we can. And the ironic thing is we have the money now. We have the money from COVID for adjustment counselors and extra supports. We can't find them. There is a mental health national public emergency right now in our country. It is not just Dracut. And the adjustment counselors, thank you, are one piece of the puzzle. I can obviously go on and on about this topic, but.
Ms. Nazaro.
Thank you. So I agree with everything Mrs. Volpe said, and to continue on, there is a crisis in our country right now. Our school adjustment counselors, we can't fill the positions that we have currently open in the school. So even alone at the Inglesby, I think we have 2 positions for our school adjustment counselors that are currently open, and we can't fill those. So although it would be wonderful to add more school adjustment counselors, right now when you can't even fill the positions that you already have, it's difficult to say, well, okay, we can put money towards that, and yes, we can add school adjustment counselors, but it's useless if we can't fill them. I think that mental health is critical to our children right now, especially coming out of COVID. There was a mental health and well-being survey that was done in 2015 in conjunction with Boston College, UMass Boston, sorry, not Boston College, UMass Boston, where they looked at the middle school and the high school, and they evaluated them and showed the level of suicide rates, the level of drinking, the level of drug use, etc. And it was a bit horrifying seeing those results. And I know that I had been advocating that we have another type of survey like that done. And in the recent school committee meeting on Monday, Mr. Stone stated that we are going to be doing, or they're looking to do another survey this fall into the winter, and I think that that's wonderful. I think that that's going to be critical to show where we need resources. It's going to give us a hard, firm number that's going to be able to tell us that we need to dedicate maybe some of our COVID relief funds in additional places to help provide support for these children. It's a tough time right now. We're all suffering, and these kids, they need help and support. We also have a Care Solace program that was just put into place. They mentioned on Monday as well. It's going to be a great 24/7, 365-day-a-year resource for our kids. Love
Ms.
that
Fowler.
timer.
Thank you. As hard as it is to hear those numbers that you just provided, it's somewhat validating because I and a group of people that I have been working with have been attending school committee meetings every single week that they have them since August, talking about mental health issues. And due to what I feel was a lack of communication back and forth about that, none of this was mentioned. It seemed to go ignored for months. And we got up there every week and continued to talk about it because we knew that kids in the school were having a much more difficult time than years prior. And we continued to advocate for it every week. And so to hear that what we were saying was true is validating, but it doesn't help our kids anymore. And so I have been at school committee meetings regularly advocating for more adjustment counselors. If we can't find them, then let's find ways to find them. Let's entice them to come here. Let's make them want to be here because they're needed. But in addition to adding more adjustment counselors, I have to say I was disappointed in the 27 positions that we got. That they're great. I'm so glad that we got those positions. Not one was an adjustment counselor. And all we've been saying for months was that we need adjustment counselors. But in addition to that, even just the use of extra bodies in the school, if you can't find an adjustment counselor, find a para. Paraprofessionals are very valuable. Find a tutor. Find anybody that can come into the school and work with groups of children that need individual or small group help, and that in turn can help, a lot of these behavioral issues and social skill issues. Thank you.
Mr. Shepherd.
It was mentioned the ruler program. So we have a fancy program that has an X and a Y graph, and then it shows different colors for your child to pick the mood that they're feeling today. That is what the ruler program is in the classrooms. To me, that's not how you evaluate how a child should be feeling. Mental health, some parents and myself have been talking about it a lot, so it's very interesting to see that now I have advocates up here, not just me and Sarah. What needs to happen is not fancy money too. We don't need more money. What needs to happen is we need to get kids in the sports. We need to have them in the extracurricular activities. We were charging students to play these things. We were charging them to be in chorus. We were charging them to be in show choir. We were charging them to be in, for the sports after school. Let's remove that. Let's get them out on the fields. Let's get them playing together again. That's what I would push for. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see kids get together and collaborate. Our wrestling team is with Tingsboro. It's not just Dracut, it's Dracut Tingsboro. That shouldn't happen. What used to happen when I was out of football is the next thing you did, Rudolph used to pull us into the gym, and that's where you wrestled. And I talked with a lot of graduating seniors with me, and they said, those are the best friends I ever had, were those people out in the field or those kids out in the gym. That's what we need to do. We need to get our kids actually, even out on the stage in band. Me and Sarah were in band together, and we're here right now. So I'm proud to be a part of those extracurricular activities, and I think that helped me with my mental health. Thank you.
All right. And lastly, Dr. Trouville.
I was one of the lucky teachers in whose classroom were placed all of the special ed students who needed to be included. And I say lucky because I was. I learned from them, and they learned from me. And so I got to be able to recognize when a child was reaching that stress level that would explode. You got to look at them and feel what they were feeling. And you got the ability to teach the other children how to accept them for who they were. I can remember a special ed student, love this kid, and his stress was so profound that I had to finally, I kind of teach outside the box, so I was thinking, what can I do to bring his stress level down? Well, I gave him 2 desks. He didn't want to sit, so we took the chair away, and all day long, he walked in the figure 8, all around. He was my top student because he was allowed to relax the way that was fitting him, not fitting the mold of what people thought. So I think we now have to go back to that classroom teacher. Give that classroom teacher the tools and the time to be able to sit with students who are exerting an emotional issue and be able to meet with them, talk with them, find out what works for them, and then implement it within their classroom.
All righty, and now we move to the final portion of the school committee forum. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to provide their closing statement. We begin with you, Ms. Navarro.
Thank you.
Nazzaro, I apologize.
That's okay. So I'm a bit nervous. You know, it was not fun going first in the beginning. It's my first candidates forum, and you know, it was tough. But I will say that this has been a great experience. My name is Alyssa Jacobs Nazzaro. I am running for one of the 2 seats open for the school committee. I did graduate, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, I did graduate from Dracut High School, class of '99. So I am a Midi. I've been a part of this community for a long time. Our schools are really important. They're really important for our community. They're important for our kids. You know, we need to take care of them. And that's a long journey, and that involves a lot of stuff. It's a joint effort. We need to work together, all of us as a community, to have these schools be the pride of Dracut and be the best that they can be. We need to make them into a place where parents don't have to choose whether or not they, you know, can send their kids to Dracut Public Schools, or if they have to go and pay to have their kids go to a private school or to another school to get what they can't get at Dracut. I don't think that that's a choice that they should have to make. We should be able to provide in our public schools everything that our parents are looking for their children, for their growth and their education and their development. And it shouldn't be a burden for them to have to send their children somewhere else because they can't get what they need. And I'm gonna fight really hard for that. I think it's really important, and I wanna see us to be the best that we can be. Thank you. And I respectfully ask for your vote on May 7th.
Thank you. Ms. Powling, your closing statement.
Thank you. Again, my name is Sarah Powling. I'm running for a seat on the Dracut School Committee. I would like to just take this opportunity to thank you, everybody. I would like to thank my family, my friends, my community members, everyone who has helped me, stood up with me, and motivated me to do this for the children of our town. I could never have begun this journey without you. It took all of us. There were so many of us in our town, and without your care and concern that you've shown for the next generation, I couldn't have done this without you. I just want you all to know how much I appreciate you. I appreciate all that everyone in town has done to help me. This really is a movement. This is a local movement in town, and I'm so proud of us all. I'm so proud of all that we've done. I would be honored to represent this town in an official manner so that I can keep fighting for our kids the way that we have been doing. I humbly ask for your vote on Saturday, May 7th at the Richardson Middle School. And again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Shepherd.
You know, the job of a school committee member is to understand its community that it represents. It's to create policy that will affect the children's learning. It's to also set educational goals for our schools and for how our administration should be teaching and should be implementing these policies. Now, I grew up in a blue-collar family where you had to sit at the table and say, you know, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z. And Dad would say, all right, here you go. Here's the money. I didn't know where that money came from, but Dad made it happen. I understand what it's like to be the students in those schools. Now, we need more representation from the kids that grew up here. Now, I'm a strong advocate for education now, but when I started this, yes, it was about COVID. Yes, I went to those meetings and I pushed back about what Desi was putting through. but I stayed because of the families. I stayed because of the kids. I stayed because they needed somebody. They, just like the special education group needs an advocate, all our kids need advocates, and I am an advocate for Dracut students. Thank you.
Dr. Truville.
Well, I am one of the blessed ones who have had 4 generations of students in the Dracut school system, and we're all fairly successful in our own right. I credit that with the sound, grounded education that we received in Dracut. You can't, people move to a town because of the educational system that's within the town. Well, I can attest that it has worked for my family. I have one lost granddaughter at the high school, and then hopefully my oldest granddaughter will start a new generation. I want to give back. Our parents taught us, whatever you receive, make sure that you pay it forward. And so, because I value this school system, I want to see that it's maintained. I want to see that we can continue on a forward march now that COVID is coming, maybe not to a real conclusion, but it's lessening. And I think that it's important for us to see that we maintain the goodness that we have had, even through COVID. And my goal is to be able to be a piece of that, to make sure that your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren have an opportunity to experience the wonderful education that I and my family experienced here in Dracut. So if you feel, I've had every job in the town, in the educational field. So I've been there, done it, know about it, and hopefully if you feel that I could do the job, please come out and vote on May 7th and vote for Linda Truville. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we'll hear from Ms. Volpe.
Thank you. When we were forced to shut down because of the pandemic, our schools pulled together like I've never seen, and we pivoted immediately to remote learning. That's because of our teachers, our administrators, and our staff. When it was time to go back, we were well ahead of the curve, and we got our kids back in school safely with more in-person learning hours than 95% of the communities in Massachusetts. Our sustained efforts to support increased state funding have come to fruition. The Dracut Public Schools will see over $3 million in additional funding next year, so we can add 27 new positions to support our teachers and staff. This is all without an increase in taxes. My next term will focus on using our COVID monies for continuing to reassess our students' needs and their learning loss and rebuilding programs. I will continue to support and respect the professionalism of our educators, administrators, and staff. I will continue supporting augmenting our special education services, and I also want to shift our focus to digital wellness. We're seeing more and more issues because of social media. We need to educate our children to use the internet responsibly and safely. I also look forward to the upcoming Campbell School project, the reconfiguration of the school complex for traffic, and also to work on the strategic plan for the future of the town, our school. I will continue to advocate for increased net school spending responsibly and incrementally, giving the town of Dracut opportunities for more economic growth. I take the needs of all of our students and staff and family into consideration. When I make every decision, I'm running out of time, I'll remain honest and sincere. I brought professional experience, stability, and data-driven decision-making to the board. I remain committed to our families, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Saturday, May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes our school committee forum. Thank you to all 5 candidates for joining us this evening. Please remember there are 2 seats open when voting on May 7th. We're going to take a 3 to 5 minute break right now before proceeding with the forum featuring the Board of Selectmen candidates. Don't go away. Stay with us. Alrighty, welcome back. If you are just joining us, you are watching the 2022 Candidates Forum. I'm your moderator, Teddy Panos. We just heard from the candidates for school committee. Now we will hear from the 5 candidates vying for the 2 available seats on the Board of Selectmen with a term of 3 years. As a reminder, candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and 2 minutes to share a closing statement at the end of the forum. I will ask the questions in a round-robin format, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. I would be happy to repeat or clarify any questions. Please refrain from rebuttals and personal attacks, and we do request that our audience also refrain from any applause and loud comments, either for or against a particular candidate, so as not to interrupt the flow of our program. The candidates for Board of Selectmen in alphabetical order are Tony Archinsky, Jennifer Kopsinski, Matthew Sheehan, Josh Taylor, and Phil Tebow. Based on a random draw, we will hear an introduction from Mr. Sheehan first.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Matthew Sheehan, and I am seeking one of your votes for the Board of Selectmen. I believe our town is moving forward in the positive direction, and I want to make sure this momentum continues. Thank you.
Alrighty, Mr. Taylor.
Hey, good evening. Thank you to everybody that set this debate up tonight. It's great to have a forum like this for the residents to hear. Communication is very important in any of these races, so I appreciate that. I am a lifelong Dracut resident, 41 years. I've been through the Dracut schools, graduated of Great Old Oak back in 1999. I am married to a special ed teacher, and we have an 11-year-old son who is currently in the Dracut school system. I am the chair of Dracut Conservation Commission. I am on CPC and on the Beaverbrook Farm Ad Hoc Committee presently. And previously, I was the president of Centerville Sportsman's Club for 6 years, on the board of directors for 10. I have spent most of my adult life trying to give back in the community in one form or another, through events at the club, through events at the Scouts when I was involved in their committees, and with Dracut Volunteers, Inc., with events through them. And I am seeking a seat in the selectmen to help continue that in a forward, positive movement and role. Thank you.
All right, next we'll hear from Mr. Tebow.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the candidate committee for coordinating this event. It really brings a great service to the voters of Dracut. I'd like to thank Dracut Access Television for broadcasting this forum. I'd like to thank our moderator, Teddy Panos, and certainly all the voters in Dracut for watching this forum. For those who don't know me, I'm Phil Tebow. I hope by the end of this hour that you get to know me a little better. I'm a lifelong resident of Dracut, 58 years so far. Dracut has been the home for my wife and I since we've been married, and we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. Dracut is where we chose to raise our 2 sons. I'm a local businessman and an architect, and I chose to set my practice here in Dracut because of the community that Dracut is. Dracut is a wonderful place to live and work. You'll hear many of the candidates say that Dracut is in a good place. Some would say that that is a recent event. I believe my service over the past 20 years has contributed to Dracut's overnight success. I have served on the Planning Board, Conservation, Community Preservation Committee, Capital Planning Committee, Master Planning Committee, and I am currently serving on the Building Committee, Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, Dracut Access TV Board of Directors, and just recently, the Dracut Land Trust on the Board of Directors. I have always been an active member on each of these committees where I serve, and I often rise to the point of leadership. My service on the Board of Selectmen will bring the same visioning and dedication that I've brought to the other boards. I ask for your consideration for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Archinsky.
Good evening. My name is Tony Archinsky. I'd like to also thank the committee for offering me the opportunity to tell the public who I am and why I believe that I would be their best choice for selectmen in the May 7th election. Starting with my bio, I'm a retired police officer who moved to Dracut 45 years ago. And although I was not born in Dracut, I do tell people that I got here as soon as I could. I married a Dracut girl named Susan Brissett. I am the parent of 2 children. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran, a homeowner, and a taxpayer. I'm currently finishing my 3rd term as a selectman, having served as the chairman, the vice chair, the clerk, throughout my tenure. I've also served as the Selectman's representative to the Open Space Committee and the Economic Development Committee. I grew up in the John F. Kennedy era, where many people in my generation feel that it is important to give back. I believe that I brought professionalism and civility to the board. I pride myself knowing that I've done my homework and I am fully engaged while allowing all the issues that come before us to be fully vetted. I believe that I can bring positive energy to the board on every issue that comes before the board, and I also believe that all of the issues that come before the board are important to you and deserve our full attention. I respect all of the candidates here tonight, and I don't run for this office against any of these candidates in particular. I run because I believe I have the best skill set, the experience, and the vision that has helped me become a good leader in the town of Dracut. There is so much more work to be done. I want to do my share to help the community that I've lived in, worked in, raised my family in all these years. I would be honored to serve another term as your selectman, and I would appreciate your vote of confidence on May 7th. Thank you.
All right, and finally, we hear from Ms. Kopczynski.
Thank you. Thank you to the debate committee, Teddy Panos, and to everybody that came out this evening and that's watching at home on TV for taking the time to get to know the candidates. Hi, I'm Jennifer Richardson Kopczynski, candidate for selectman. I'm a Dracut native, an attorney and paralegal, and a political newcomer. I'm running for selectman because I want to make sure Dracut continues to be an outstanding place to live and to raise a family. As a lifelong resident, I want our town to stay successful for our families, our children, and our seniors. As your selectman, I'll work to keep Dracut affordable, focus on land preservation, and support our police officers and firefighters. With more than 15 years' experience as an attorney and a paralegal, my private sector career includes extensive project management, budgeting, and oversight. Good things are happening in Dracut right now. We have strong leadership, our finances are in good shape, and infrastructure projects are being worked on. We need to keep the positive momentum going and make sure Dracut stays on the right track. From the time I was a young girl, I was taught the value of hard work and the importance of giving back to our community. My family ran the Richardson's Dairy. My great-grandfather was the town's fire chief, and my father was a member of the planning board. It will be an honor to continue in their footsteps and to serve the town of Dracut. As we look to the future, it's also important to continuing honoring our agricultural history and balance that with land preservation to balance growth. I'm proud to be from Dracut, and I want to give back to our town. You can count on me to be positive, professional, and most importantly, pro-Dracut. As your selectman, I'll work to keep Dracut moving in the right direction. I humbly ask for your vote for selectman on Saturday, May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move on to the moderated portion of the forum. Question number 1. There isn't much room to spare in town finances, making funding for police, fire, schools, public works a delicate and always underfunded balancing act. How do you propose to bring additional sustainable funds into the town to maintain and improve these necessary services, and what actions will you take to make it happen? Mr. Taylor, we begin with you.
Sure. Thank you, Teddy, for the question. And the first thing to do is to take a really good look and analyze the funds that we currently have and where they're going and how they're being spent. How we can grow funds is going to be through economic development, through getting more businesses to actively be in our town, and to take a really good look at where they are, how we can get them in, where we have available land for building, and what the best uses of that are, and try to gear towards that moving forward. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Tebow.
The best place to get it, of course, is what would be considered new growth. Businesses, or new residential homes. Those are easy things to say. What we need to do, though, is really drill down into our zoning bylaws, because they actually control a lot of what the new building would be. So many businesses that are trying to come into town hit these little roadblocks. Mini Bites, a restaurant that just opened up fairly recently, spent almost a year trying to open up its business. It's things like that that we need to kind of cut out the red tape, get the businesses in, update our zoning bylaws so we can create denser business zones within the town, and essentially build up vertically, and rather than spreading out, because our zoning bylaws right now really call for almost a sprawl in the town, and I know that we don't want that, because we want to be able to maintain our open spaces. So it's a multi-pronged process. So certainly new growth, but we need to get our zoning bylaws in order so we can foster that new growth, bring new businesses in town, and really foster the businesses that are here to make them want to grow even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Archinsky.
Well, I think it's pretty well agreed that economic development is going to be the driving engine to raise money. We certainly do not want to raise taxes. We're at our maximum 2.5, Proposition 2.5 level, maximum level for the tax levy. So there was a big push within the current administration for more economic development, and I happen to agree with Phil. You know, the only way that we can bring more money into the town is to increase our new growth. In order to bring new businesses into town, we need to identify where they can go, such as enterprise zones. And we also have to go out there, which we've already started, and start rezoning parcels so that we can get big businesses to come in specific areas so that it doesn't upset the rural character of the town. If a big business wants to come in and locate in the town of Dracut, if the zoning is already there for them, you've just cut 2 to 3 years off of their planning, and they will come, and they, you know, I happen to be a facilities manager at my own building where I work, and our tax bill is $50,000 a year. We pay the town of Chelmsford for taxes. We want a couple of those big buildings to come into Dracut in the right properly zoned areas to increase our tax base and increase the net growth, or new growth. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kupczynski.
Thank you. I agree with the other candidates that the key is going to be economic development. But we also need to look at the zoning bylaws. They haven't been revamped in decades, so I think we need to look at that and figure out what's best for our town. Right now, most of the revenue from taxes, I believe it's close to 90% comes from citizens, and if we can bump that just a little bit to businesses, that's gonna make a huge impact. Thank you.
All righty. And lastly, we'll hear from Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you. You know, I agree with with everybody sitting up here when it comes to the zoning. We do need more commercial tax, but I think we need to come up with some kind of advertisement plan for our town. Like, I've seen numerous commercials for like the town of Marlboro. What Marlboro offers, I think we need to do something along the lines of that. Like, we need some kind of commercial or some kind of advertisement to say, hey, this is what Dracut offers. We are a farming community, but we want to entertain your business in our town, and I think that'd be a good start.
All righty. Question number 2. Several decisions in recent years have led to understandable concerns among some townspeople that the Board of Selectmen often awards positions and contracts based on nepotism and cronyism. If elected, what will you do to address this issue and ensure transparency and parity in these decisions going forward? Mr. Tebow, we begin with you on this one.
Well, thank you very much. Excellent question, and I share the same sentiment with a lot of those voters. I think there is too much nepotism and cronyism within the Board of Selectmen. We've seen recently that the chairperson's husband was appointed at the DATV, and she claims that there's no conflict of interest there, and I'm not sure how appointing a relative such as a husband to any board, it does not constitute a conflict of interest. I think it needs, all the appointments that are made by the Board of Selectmen and by the town manager and by the town moderator needs to be done in a fair and equitable manner. If there are multiple applicants, each applicant needs to be talked with. I've often seen that the name is picked kind of in the dark. And that needs to stop. Everything needs to be transparent. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Mr. Archinsky.
Well, as a sitting board member, I can say that I've been on the board for 9 years. I've never asked anybody to hire anybody for me. I'm not aware of anybody that's, that been hired under cloudy circumstances. As far as cronyism on the board, appointments on the board, sometimes there are things that appear that there may be underlying issues where someone is selected for a position over somebody else. I think you have to look at each individual situation. There are people, I know, for some of the appointments that we make on open space committees and things like that, where I prefer to let the open space committee interview their own people and then come to us and say, hey, we would like this person to sit on our board. That's the way that it should be done. Just recently, when one of the board members wanted to require somebody that is offering to volunteer for the town to submit a resume, I voted against that. I just didn't see that being any help. We're a town that actually we depend on volunteers, and so I certainly didn't want to push away any volunteers because we wanted to ask them for their resumes. If you want to volunteer for the town, come on down, we'll give you a job. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kupczynski.
Thank you. I agree that there may be the appearance in some of our past hirings, and coming from the private sector, in the private sector, when you're looking to hire somebody, you post the job, you ask for resumes, you review the resumes, you bring people in for an interview. And if we could follow that process, that would solve a lot of the issues. I look at the hiring of the town manager. She essentially had years-long job interview when she was the acting town manager. And things like that can really help this town hire the right people. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sheehan.
When it comes to, a position that needs to be hired in the town, I think everybody should be interviewed. I think it should be an open process. When it comes to somebody wanting to volunteer on a board, if somebody wants to volunteer on a board, they should just be allowed to volunteer on a board. Nowadays, it's so hard to get people involved, and I don't think anybody should be turned away.
And lastly, we hear from Mr. Taylor.
Sure. As I said earlier, I am on some of these boards, and the last board that I got on was the ad hoc committee, and for that, I had to submit a resume as part of that. And personally, I feel that my resume was submitted, but I was picked over the other person for political reasons rather than resume, because I felt that the person that was also running for it wasn't as well liked by the person appointing them. And I don't think that's correct at all. And that was one of my reasons on running for a position like this, is I think there needs to be a large revamp in the whole way that committees and boards are appointed. And everybody has to work together as a team, and it should be up to the board as a whole to accept a 5th or 7th member, depending on how it is. And, last, selectman meeting a few months ago, when it came up, they appointed 3 people to economic development rather than 1, so they did not have to pick the one. And there was very little questioning on the Board of Selectmen on how that's going to affect the rest of the committees. And, in general, that whole topic needs a lot more discussion before a vote like that should have taken place, in my opinion. And if elected, that is one of the things that I want to look into to try to come up with an SOP, so to speak, a standard procedure for appointments on boards and committees. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Next question. Many residents submitted questions inquiring on the balancing or prioritization of preservation of open space, residential development, and commercial development in town. Which do you view as most important, and why? If elected, what specific actions will you take to further any of these along? Let's begin with Mr. Archinsky.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I went first last time. Well, I mean, certainly the preservation of open space. Can you repeat that, Ted?
Sure. Residents submitted questions looking on the balancing or prioritization of preservation of open space, residential development, and commercial development in town. Which do you view as most important? Why? And if elected, what specific actions will you take to further those along?
Right, well, I can tell you that I've served on the Open Space Committee since I became a selectman 9 years ago. I come from the big city, Lowell. I was actually born in the housing projects in your neighborhood, Teddy, down in the Acre. And when I was a kid, open space was the North Common that had 2 trees in it. Coming out here, being appointed to the Open Space Committee, it just gave me a renewed a love for open space. I think that's why a lot of people that are here come to Dracut. You know, when you come in from Methuen, you see the beautiful farms and the rolling hills, and that's part of the beauty of our town. So there is a balance. We do have to balance having enough tax revenue in order to keep our open space. I think we've done a good job of it thus far. So I would say that continuing, you know, through CPC to maintain open space is definitely a #1 priority for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kupczynski.
Thank you. I am a big proponent of open space. We have a beautiful town, and I think that we need to continue saving the open space that we have. However, I do recognize that we need to continue with economic development and residential development. I have a lot of concerns about the big development projects for residential areas and what that's going to do to our school systems, our sewer systems, our police and fire. So I would like to see those kind of backed off a little bit. But I would like to see more businesses come into town and take the tax burden off the residentials. Thank you.
Mr. Sheehan.
You know, open space is big in town. You know, we are a farming community. To Mr. Archinsky's point, you know, pulling into town and seeing open space is great. But we want to keep taxes where they are. We don't want to raise taxes. So trying to do whatever we can to attract businesses to come in to increase our commercial tax base would be, I think, my priority. And again, to my previous statement, we need to put some kind of advertisement plan together to bring these businesses into town.
Okay. Mr. Taylor.
As a candidate that sits on CPC, land preservation, open space is very important to me. As far as a plan moving forward, I mean, I'm a builder in town. I really don't want to see a lot more developments going in. But with that said, again, at a couple of meetings ago, there was items brought forward where the state is going to try to mandate more building lots in town, which will become a zoning issue. So until that information comes forward, I really can't give you a plan of what would happen. Personally, I would like to see some areas zoned for business that won't impact the residents of the town to create some tax income. But I would also really hate to see any of our open farm land get eaten up for it or anything like that. And that's why CPC is so important, to try to preserve whatever land that we can. So, thank you.
Mr. Tebow.
I think that the 3 items that you've listed, open space, businesses and residential, they're all essentially 3 legs on a stool. I mean, none of them, the stool won't stand without each leg being treated equally. I've been on the Community Preservation Committee. I served as chairman for 1 year. We were able to save the East Richardson parcel, or the East Richardson Preserve, 45 acres that attaches to the Dunlap Sanctuary. I also served on the planning board. So I know the value of good zoning, good planning, and that's what this town really needs, is good planning. We just finished up our master plan that was adopted back in, I think it was 2020. The last time it had been adopted by the town was 1968, so it was woefully outdated. But within that master plan, it shows equally that we need open space, we need a better defined business zones, we need better defined residential zones. We have wonderful zones in the Navy Yard in Collinsville that are certainly kind of just laying fallow, and they could really be bolstered. to create more economic development within the town, and that won't impact any of the open space. As a matter of fact, it helps to preserve it because we don't need to touch it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Because we haven't heard any dings, I think we're gonna get a couple of extra questions in, with you folks.
We're trying.
Describe an activity or subcommittee or committee that you've been involved with within the town. What did your involvement mean to you, and how did it shape and impact the town? We start with you, Ms. Kupczynski.
Well, unfortunately, this is probably not the best question for me because I haven't been involved in any of the committees in town. But I am passionate about open space, and based on my family's history and my own history, I would love to be involved in the Open Space Committee and the Preservation Committee.
Also, any activities you may have been involved in?
Oh, any other activities? So, could you repeat the question then?
Yeah, describe an activity that you've been involved with within the town. What did it mean to you to be involved, and how did it shape and impact the town in your thoughts?
So one of the activities that I'm involved with is for my daughter. She is in special education, and she's involved in an organization in town, in the Merrimack Valley as well, that deals with special education kids and helping them get involved in sports. Seeing these kids out on the baseball field, out on the basketball field, anywhere, the basketball court, excuse me, is just so inspiring. It's the same thing if you go down to the track and see the kids in Best Buddies and the unified track or the unified basketball. It's just, it changes the way you think about these kids, and it's just so inspiring to watch them thrive.
Mr. Sheehan.
I served 3 terms on the Dracut School Committee previously, and I think the highlight of those 3 terms, well, there's several highlights, but the biggest highlight was the high school renovation project. And I mean, it's the gem of the town. You know, that was big for our town. I was proud to be just, you know, a small part of that. I served with some great board members, you know, at that time. And, you know, prior to COVID, you know, I was part of a group that organized a road race that raised money for, you know, cancer in memory of, you know, a late Board of Selectmen member. We served a bunch of boards, James Gookin, and a paraprofessional in our school system, Lori Comtois. And unfortunately, you know, with COVID, that went away, but I think those are 2 probably good highlights.
Mr. Taylor.
Well, sitting on some town boards, you know, the boards that I sit on aren't the most recognized for highlights. You know, Conservation Commission, most of the time when people come in, they're not too happy to come in to see us because they're coming in for permission, a lot of times, things like that. As far as activities, I would really lean towards my days at the Sportsman's Club. More importantly, when my son got into the scouting program and I got involved with the Scout Committee and realized that the Scouts lost their home, they needed a place. And as president of the club, pushed the club to charter the Scouts. And we really involved them a lot in our community work, in our cleanups on the streets. Through that, I got a lot of recognition from the former town manager, and he was the reason that I was put on conservation in the beginning, was because of the involvement through the club and the youth with the town. And that I have a lot of pride in, and because of all that involvement, that's what was a stepping stone for me to get to where I am today. Thank you.
Mr. Tebow.
I guess I'll try to keep it under 2 minutes, right? As I said in my opening remarks, I certainly have served on a great number of committees in town. I enjoy good government. The planning board, most recently there, we updated the subdivision rules and regulations. It's certainly not a bright and shiny document, but it's something that really helps make the community very livable. On the permanent building committee, where I've served for the last 18 years, Mr. Sheehan is right. The Dracut High School, wonderful project. Each member of the permanent building committee served over 1,500 hours to make sure that that project was built properly. And we served today where we built the recent Collinsville Fire Station, done the town hall, the library, police department, and we still look at other projects that are underway. Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, where I served there was a need to update a emergency radio communications tower in Dracut. And I had alerted Jim Duggan, town manager at the time, that there was funding available through the emergency call center for replacement of communications, and that saved the town $250,000. So I'm very proud of the service that I've been able to perform.
Okay. Mr. Archinsky.
Well, I like most of the challenges, I've actually served on a lot of committees over the years, you know, the zoning bylaw review committee, the open space committee. Also, back in a couple of years ago with the high school renovation project, I was busy doing that. The Vogue School renovation, I worked on a committee that brought in the tax revenue to be able to provide our share to the Vogue School renovation project. The new police station, the town hall project, the new library. But I guess I can say that, you know, the most important committee that I've ever served on is the one that I'm on right now, which is being a member of the Board of Selectmen. I've been doing it for 9 years. I love helping people, and there's a lot more to the Board of Selectmen, being a Board of Selectmen, than just showing up on Tuesday night. And I hope that the challengers know that. I get my agenda on Friday afternoons. I go through the agenda on Saturday morning, every Saturday morning for the last 9 years, from 8 a.m. until 12 noon. I drive around town, I look at what's on the agenda, I do my research. When I show up on Tuesday night, I know what I'm talking about because I've done the research, and I'm there to make the best decision for the taxpayers and the voters of Dracut. So the most effective committee that I'm happy to serve on is the one I'm on right now.
Okay. And the final question, what is the biggest single challenge facing the town of Dracut over the next 12 to 24 months, and how do you propose to deal with that challenge? We begin with Mr. Sheehan.
Well, I think the police department needs to be, you know, addressed. You know, there was a vote of no confidence in the chief. You know, I think that the board needs to sit down with the union to find out, you know, what the exact problem is, you know, and try to address that as best they can. You know, obviously we can't fire the chief. You know, do we buy him out? I think that that's, in my eyes, is one of the major hurdles in the next, you know, upcoming months that really needs to be addressed right away.
Mr. Taylor.
Well, the police are a very big concern, as Matt just said. More importantly is the efforts to hire more police, more firemen right now. You know, there is administration concerns, and as Mr. Archinsky brought up at a couple of meetings ago, when the deputy was in, was trying to find out why we haven't been so active on the hiring process. And I would really like to look into that if elected to help push that forward, because we need more boots on the ground, we need more servicemen. You know, we have new fire stations, and we're gonna be voting on new fire trucks, but without, you know, men to operate them, they don't do us too good. And we really need to look at getting those positions filled as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tebow.
I guess I would hearken back to the Dracut Master Plan that was recently adopted. That saw our number one, the number one goal that should be accomplished would be zoning reform. I think that needs to be taken head on, because it has long-range ramifications. If you don't do anything now, Dracut's really not going to be able to prosper as it best could. So I would make a formulation to have a zoning reform committee, get members of different boards on there, plus members of the general public. We need at-large, so we have businessmen, we have residential, we have voters, we have we look at all aspects of the zoning bylaws, much like we did with the master plan, that we get all involvement, we get a lot of visioning sessions. It really is almost a 2-year process to do it properly. So it's something that needs to be started now, and as the farmers say, you make hay while the sun is shining, so I think it needs to be accomplished very quickly.
Okay. Mr. Archinsky.
Well, I kind of disagree with some of the challenges relative to, the police and public safety departments being one of our biggest challenges. I can tell you that I am the only candidate up here tonight that has a dual endorsement from both the police and the fire. They believe in my ability to do the job as selectman. As far as funding for new positions, we have worked very, very hard. We finally got to the point where we have promised that we're going to hire 2 additional police officers every year from now on out until they get to full strength. And at last night's selectmen's meeting, the fire chief just notified the town that by the end of this year, they will have hired 6 new firefighters, and they will be at full strength. And that is the result of a lot of work on the current Board of Selectmen and a lot of commitment to bringing our public safety personnel up to snuff. I think that the biggest challenge is that, and believe it or not, this is a challenge. I just had this conversation with the town manager the other day, is one of our biggest challenges is the timeline for federally funded projects. We got a lot of federal money coming into town, and we have a list of about 60 things that we want to do with it, but there are bookends on when these projects have to be implemented and completed. So projects, such as recapping the landfill so we can build more playing fields and put a solar farm out there and things like that. We really have to get that done, and I know I'm running out of time here. And also, one of the challenges is continuing to fight to properly fund our school system. I've been fighting for 9 years for this. We need to bring that funding back up to snuff. Thank you.
Came so close to the ding there, Ms. Kupczynski.
Thank you. I do have to agree with Mr. Sheehan that the police chief issue that's going on right now is a big issue. At the basic fundamentals of our society is law and order, and without a police department that doesn't have confidence in their chief, that's a big problem. We need to get this resolved, and we need to get the department back to a place where they have support of their chief. And if we don't get there, it's going to cause problems for the department, and I think that needs to be nipped in the bud as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay. And now we move to the final portion of the Board of Selectmen Forum. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes for a closing statement, and unless I've messed up the order, I believe we start with you, Mr. Taylor.
Sure. Thank you. Closing statement. Number one, if anyone has followed me on Facebook, you can clearly see that I have a strong dislike of politics. For anybody that has known me my life, to see me sitting here right now, it is quite a feat. I'm doing this because I want to help the town move forward. I'm doing this on my own behalf. I'm doing this with my own funding. I am not with any groups. I am solely independent in this, and I'm here to work for the citizens of this community. And that's what I intend to do if elected. I've, again, spent a large part of my adult life trying to give back to the community, and this is just another step that I want to go to do forward. I'm not going to sit here and ask anybody for their vote tonight. I'm going to sit here and ask you to continue to follow the journey, follow what I'm doing online, take a look at the vehicles, take a look at the bus, help get the word out. I'm actively trying to get more voter turnout. I'm trying to do things for my community while running for my community. I don't sit here with keynotes. I speak from the heart. I tell you how I feel, and I will add a dynamic to the Board of Selectmen and thinking outside of the box that I don't think it's seen in many years if elected. And I look forward to helping the community prosper. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tebow.
Thank you to the committee, to you, Teddy, to Dracut Access Television, and certainly to you, the voters. There's no single activity that has more direct influence in the daily life of anybody in town than the election of your town officials. I hope you've gathered better understanding of each of the candidates here. Over the past 20 years, I've put service to the community as a priority in my life. I have provided performance over promises. What is said this evening should have an influence over some of your decisions, and those are the promises. My dedication on the boards that I've served and the organizations should give evidence of the commitment I have to the dedication to the town of Dracut. These are performances over those promises. Words are ethereal, behavior does not lie. The reward for doing good work should be the ability to continue doing good work. I respectfully ask for you to permit me to continue doing that good work and cast your vote for me on May 7th for Dracut Selectman. Thank you.
Mr. Archinsky.
Thank you, Teddy. First, I'd like to thank the committee and all the people here tonight that were involved in tonight's debate. I would especially like to thank my family for supporting me, for the many sacrifices that that they've made over the years, being a family member of somebody who's in elective office. We've come a long way since I was first elected in 2013. During my tenure, we've had an unprecedented collaboration with the school side of government. We've indicated to the town manager that economic development is a priority. We've restructured building permit fees to allow easier permitting processes. We've rezoned land in strategic places to allow easier access to builders that may want to come in. We've executed a municipal aggregation agreement allowing residents to purchase electricity at discounted rates, resulting in cost savings. We've kept the tax rate down to encourage folks to stay and raise their families in this town. My time spent on the Open Space Committee has given me a renewed appreciation for land preservation with controlled growth. My promise to the voters and taxpayers of Dracut is that I will do everything in my power to keep our town government accountable and responsive to you. I have worked tirelessly over the years to make our town a better place to live and to raise our families. In order to maintain experience, vision, demonstrated ability, and proven leadership on the Board of Selectmen, you must vote for me first and then any other candidate of your choice. With plenty of critical issues on the horizon, experience matters more now than ever. I hope to continue serving as your trusted voice. Please vote for Tony Atchinsky, number 5 on the ballot, because real experience really does matter.
Ms. Kopsinski.
Thank you. Again, thank you to the debate committee and to you, Teddy, for moderating this, and to everybody that's here and at home watching the debate. Again, my name is Jennifer Richardson Kopsinski. I'm a Dracut native, an attorney and a paralegal, and a political newcomer. As your selectman, I'll work to keep Dracut affordable, focus on land preservation, and support our police officers and firefighters. Good things are happening in Dracut right now, and we need to keep the positive momentum going and make sure Dracut stays on the right track. You can count on me to be positive, professional, and most importantly, pro-Dracut. I humbly ask for your vote for selectmen on Saturday, May 7th. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Teddy. Thank you to the debate committee. I want to thank everybody, that's in any race in this town, from the moderator to the school committee, to the 5 of us up here. It takes a lot to put your name on the ballot. It takes a lot to run in this town. And as I've said before, I believe that Dracut is in good hands with our manager. I am running to continue this positive momentum and to make sure that our manager has the support and tools that she needs. I also want to make sure that we can do all we can to support our schools and our first responders, and I humbly ask for one of your votes for Matthew Sheehan on Saturday, May the 7th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we conclude our 2022 Dracut's Candidates Forum. We hope you enjoyed hearing from your candidates for school committee and board of selectmen and town moderator. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Thank you to all of the candidates for joining us in person tonight, to all of the voters who submitted questions, tuned in to watch the forum, and who are staying engaged in the civic process in the town of Dracut. Thank you also to Karen Bernier for timekeeping, the folks at Harmony Hall for their support in providing this beautiful space, and Dracut Access Television for broadcasting the event, making it accessible to everyone in the town. And they never put themselves on here, but I'm going to also thank Emily Maddox and Nancy McDonald from the committee for all their hard work, providing me a script and questions that all I had to do was read. But I will take a moment to add an editorial comment here. Please remember to vote. Election Day is Saturday, May 7th. 5 candidates have taken the time to be here tonight and to run for Board of Selectmen, 5 for School Committee, and 2 for Town Moderator. They care. You need to care. Election Day is Saturday, May 7th. Precincts 1 and 6A. You will vote at the Senior Center at 951 Mammoth Road. All other precincts, vote at the Richardson Middle School, 1570 Lakeview Avenue. The deadline to apply for an absentee ballot by mail is Tuesday, May 3rd, or you can apply in person at Town Hall by noon, Friday, May 6th. There's a link to the information on voting on the Dracut Candidates Committee Facebook page, and it's also available on the town's website. However you do it, do it. Don't forget to vote. Don't underestimate your importance in local elections or the importance of those elections themselves. Here is where it matters most. Thank you and good night.